Good evening, friends. It is my proud privilege to be part of this session, and I thank Dr. Gupta for inviting me for this session. So I'll be talking today about various device therapies in cardiovascular diseases. So I'll start my presentation. So today's topic is device therapy in cardiovascular disease and overview. So the device therapy for cardiac conditions started as early as 1950 when Senning implanted first pacemaker in Europe, and there was development of external defibrillator in US almost same time. 25 years later, ICD was invented for prevention of sudden cardiac death, and then came in the biventricular pacemakers. And all these devices, all of us, we know they've improved quality of life and survival of cardiac patients tremendously. So heart failure device therapies, there are various ICDs, CRTDs, then mechanical circulatory support devices, short-term versus long-term. Then we have other devices as well, like valvular closure replacement devices, monitoring devices, some stimulation devices, and wearable devices. Then pacemakers, we have a single chamber pacemaker, dual chamber, loop recorders, and implantable sensors. So coming to basic pacemaker. So this is the pacemaker generator, which is implanted in a pocket, and it provides the rate to support metabolic needs, provides various diagnostics also, and depending on the use of the battery, its life can vary 8 to 10 years. And some of the new pacemakers, in fact, they include therapies which can pace and which can terminate atrial tachycardia and atrial flutter also. So this is how a pacemaker, a small generator in fact, and these are the leads. This is the pinned one. We have the screw-in also. Mostly we are using nowadays screw-in leads. And this lead goes to right ventricle, and this goes to a pocket which is made in prepectoral or subpectoral region in left or right side, depending on patient's condition. So we have various indications for pacemaker, like sinus node dysfunction, sinus arrest. Then we have various types of AV blocks, like symptomatic Mobis 2, or third degree or higher degree AV blocks, or complete heart block, and trifascicular blocks. Patient is symptomatic. When we implant pacemaker, and if we see the patient ECG, we identify whether it is paced rhythm or not by seeing the spikes. And nowadays, these are the bipolar pacemakers. So the spike is small. If the pacemaker is unipolar in pacing mode, then the spikes are big. So before the P, we are seeing the small vertical spike, and before QRS complex with this ventricular spike. And that is why we identify patient is having DDD pacing mode. Now coming to heart failure. So heart failure, we know its prevalence is rising throughout the world because our population is aging, and there's a huge lot incidence of obesity, diabetes, hypertension. After MI also, there's an increased survival due to primary PCI and all other successful stories for prevention of sudden cardiac death. And so there's an increase in heart failure patients in our society. However, we have therapies to improve outcome in heart failure patients as well. But before this, if we see heart failure, it goes into 4 stages. And we see that it starts from stage A, which is high risk for heart failure development, but apparently by now has no symptoms. So from there, we start risk reduction, family and patient education. We treat other risk factors like hypertension, diabetes, dyslipidemia. We start with the ACE inhibitors, etc. Then stage B, where patient has heart disease but no symptoms. Then we give ACE inhibitors to all patients, beta blockers to the required ones. Stage C, where patient has heart disease or previous or symptoms. Then in these ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, along with dietary sodium restrictions, diuretics, and other dependent digoxin if the rhythm requires. And cardiac resynchronization here can be given. Revascularization therapy can be given if required. and a multidisciplinary team to be started, and aldosterone antagonist. If patient goes into refractory symptoms, then of course patient is now critical, so will require inotropes. And we have then other therapies in our armamentarium, depending on feasibility and other factors. So comes the issue of sudden cardiac death in heart failure patients. And we know that QRS duration is an independent predictor of mortality if it is more than 140 milliseconds. Other risk factors obviously are AS, creatinine, ejection fraction, and heart rate. We are seeing in this very clearly the cumulative survival is reduced when QRS duration is increased. If we see this figure, we see that we have been using ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, MRAs, ARBs with various reductions in patients' mortality. Mortality in heart failure with reduced ejection fraction remains high despite introduction of therapies over the last 20 years. In fact, they have improved survival to a quite extent. If we see this, ACE inhibitor 16% reduction, beta blockers have given us 34% reduction, MRA is 30%, ARB is 17%, and Evanode also has shown us 19% reduction. However, 50% of the patients die within 5 years of diagnosis. So chronic heart failure associated with a devastating burden, and despite the introduction of treatment, the mortality rate for patients with chronic HF is about 50% at 5 years after diagnosis. And unfortunately, even mild to moderate, that is NYHA class 2 patients are at a high risk of this kind of death. So 34% class 1 and 2 death rate, and class 3 and 4, 42% on a median follow-up of 3 years. So that shows the burden of sudden cardiac deaths in these patients with heart failure. And sudden death is most frequent cause. 45% are due to sudden death, and mildly symptomatic patients are at a higher risk for sudden death, but overall risk of death increases with escalation of NYHA class, but obviously. So overactivation of RAS and SNS underpins current heart failure therapies. We know this, and we have this RAS inhibitors, then these heart failure with reduced ejection symptoms and progression, beta blockers. That is how we upgrade our therapies, and there's a need for novel therapeutic agent that would further improve patients' outcome. So we know that ARNI has come, and we have been using it since now, in fact, many years. 2016 guidelines have given us class 1B level. That is, this sacubitril/valsartan is recommended as a replacement for ACE inhibitor to further reduce the risk for hospitalization and death in ambulatory patients with reduced ejection fraction who remain symptomatic despite ACE inhibitors, a beta blocker, and MRA. And all of us, we have been using it since then. We are left, right, and center, and we have been seeing the benefit as well. However, what for ventricular dyssynchrony, when QRS becomes prolonged, chronic QRS becomes bizarre? So what we can do? So for that, we have a pacing armamentarium with us to improve ventricular dyssynchrony, which improves in turn LV function. So moderate to severe heart failure population has IVCD at the tune of almost 30% conduction delay, and this cardiac dyssynchrony leads to abnormal interventricular septal valve motion, reduced pressure generation, reduced pulse pressure, reduced ejection fraction and cardiac output, filling pressure, filling timings reduced, and prolonged mitral regurgitation duration. So for this, we have this therapy for achieving cardiac resynchronization. In this, what we do is, we have an atrial lead, atrial synchronous biventricular pacing is our aim, and we have a left ventricular lead via coronary sinus, and we have a backup epicardial approach if we don't get it through coronary sinus. So basically, this cardiac resynchronization therapy is the one which we are going to discuss for this LBB kind of pattern for patients with reduced ejection fraction who are going into multiple times heart failure and are in NYHA higher classes. So if we see this figure, this is the clinical consequences of LVB. This is the normal synchronous RV and LV contraction. And this is how we see when LV is dilated, is asynchronous, some part is lagging behind another, and that is how it is reducing cardiac output and other parameters as we saw just now in our previous slide. So how do we achieve it? We put a RA lead, we put a RV lead, and we put a coronary sinus lead for LV pacing. So we have these 3 leads, and initially if QRS complex is this, then after pacing both the ventricles simultaneously or sequentially, we get this narrowing complex, which makes this LV to contract from its normal routine site. So CRT may improve ejection fraction and reduce patient symptoms. So this is what our CRT is. This is our generator. This is our coronary sinus lead and RARV. The leads are put simultaneously. So this is, we saw in previous one, the LV dilated, the contractility asynchronous. And when we put this RA lead, RV lead, and a coronary sinus lead, which is going here, so LV starts contracting from up, basal to apex, and there's improvement in sequence of contraction leading to improvement in contractility and cardiac output. So what are the indications for cardiac resynchronization therapy? Class 1A, these are the trials, Companion and CARE-HF, which has given us this conclusion to help. That is CRT-P or CRT-D is recommended in patients in sinus rhythm with a QRS duration of more than 120 millisecond, LVB morphology, and an EF less than 35%. Non-LVB morphology, it is 2A indication. So it should be considered in patients in sinus rhythm with a QRS of more than 150, irrespective of QRS morphology, and an EF of 35%. Patients in permanent AF, CRT-P or CRT-D in functional class 3 or ambulatory class 4, QRS duration more than 120, EF less than 35. If pacing required because of slow ventricular rate, then it can be given to B and pacemaker dependent as a result of AV node ablation, or patient's ventricular rate is less than 60. So in these people, if we require pacing, then we should be giving a RV-LV lead for synchronous ventricle pacing followed by atrial pacing. That's what it means. Patients with an indication for conventional pacing, like CRT in NYHA class 3 and 4, EF less than 35%, irrespective of QRS duration, to reduce risk of heart failure, and CRT in NYHA functional class 2, EF less than 35, respective QRS duration to reduce the risk of F. Now, coming to assist devices, either percutaneous or implanted. They are for, so very common device, IABP, when patient comes in cardiogenic shock, then we put it and it improves diastolic filling of coronary arteries, and it helps us sometimes to tide over the crisis. Then we have ventricular assist devices. We have the tandem heart, which is put with the help of a cardiac surgeon, and its only problem is that it is very costly. Then we have Impella in high risk percutaneous intervention, high risk PCIs, left vein PCIs or multivessel PCIs, and reduced EF. This is indicated that we should put Impella in left ventricle to offload left ventricle, and we should perform our percutaneous interventions. Then we have these left ventricular assist devices. They were first generation, then came in the second generation and third generation. So they are getting refined and refined. And now we are seeing that third generation is a small one and comparatively easily implanted onto heart. And this is the cardiac surgeon's job. So ventricular assist device components are, this is the device which is put through apex, cut through apex. In flow cannula, there's a pump, and this is a outflow graft and percutaneous drive line. And then if you see this is as small as it comes in your hollow of your palm. And this is HeartMate 2. It is how it is put, and this is the belt containing batteries and everything, and this is tied to the abdomen of the patient, and the patient can carry it in a bag, and patient can be up and about. So this is how it looks. Patient can go on working to its physical capacity by after wearing this. Now coming to ICD. So sudden cardiac death rates in CHF patients with LV dysfunction. So there's a total mortality of 15 to 40%, and sudden cardiac death accounts for almost 50% of total deaths. So we have ICD, intracardiac defibrillator devices, and they have evolved gradually right from 1980 to various trials have supported and various developments this ICD therapy has seen so far. And now coming to recommendation for use of implanted cardiac defibrillator devices in patients with heart failure. So for secondary prevention, ICD is recommended in a patient with a ventricular arrhythmia causing hemodynamic instability who is expected to survive for more than 1 year with good functional status and to reduce risk of sudden death, class 1A indication. Primary prevention, it is recommended for patients with NYHA class 2 to 3, EF less than 35, despite more than 3 months of treatment with optimum therapy and survival more than 1 year, good functional status, and our purpose is to reduce risk of sudden death. For ischemic etiology, more than 40 days after acute MI, and for non-ischemic etiology, class 1A indication. And this is our AICD, this is generator, this is CAN, and this is our lead which goes into RV, and these are our SVC coil, this is RV coil, these are the defibrillator apparatus. So high voltage therapy it gives, and it restores sinus rhythm in presence of VT and VF. It provides defibrillation or cardioversion shock or anti-tachycardia pacing to terminate VT-VF. And if patient is having baseline bradycardia, or if patient gets bradycardia after therapy, then it provides temporary transitory pacing also. And it keeps on recording patient's arrhythmic episodes. And whenever we interrogate it, when patient comes to us, we interrogate, we can see the record that how many episodes of VT patient has undergone, how many times patient received ATP, how many times patient received therapy for these things, and how many times patient got simply converted by ATPs or on its own. So by seeing these records, we can maybe escalate our antiarrhythmic therapy as well, or it can differentiate SVT and VT. So we can maybe change our settings of ICD. So this is how anti-tachycardia pacing, and it comes to normal rhythm. Here it was VT running, it gave a shock, came to normal rhythm. Here it was VF going on, it gave a shock, and it came to normal rhythm. So that is how our ICD works for patients. So this is our defibrillation, how it works, see. So this is, so shock, this is fibrillating everywhere, and the shock comes and it restores to normal synchronous contraction of the heart. Wonderful. Now, so who are the people who should receive an ICD? We know that the chances of survival from cardiac arrest, we see this timeline, minutes, 1 to 9 minutes. 1 minute, 90% chances of survival. So the earliest you can do anything for the patient, that only increases chances of survival for the patient who is undergoing this episode. So indications, prevention for sudden cardiac arrest, secondary indications, patients who had experienced a previous sudden cardiac arrest or ventricular arrhythmia. And this one is supported by the trials like AVID, SIDS, CASH in this population. Primary prevention, patient who have not previously experienced any ventricular arrhythmia or sudden cardiac arrest, but are at risk. And studies like MEDIT, sudden cardiac SCD, HEFT have shown the use of ICD in these subset of patients. However, recently there was one paper had come which discuss the disruptive innovation. And just for the introduction's sake, I'm taking this slide over here. They showed that in so many number of patients we have been implanting ICD, but all of them, they do not require ICD shock. And some of them may not require ICD shock even throughout their life. So maybe we should have some other better parameters to judge the risk of getting a sudden cardiac arrest, maybe some ECG parameters. So this is how primary prevention ICD patients, what they have to say is that there are lower rate of ICD shocks and non-cardiac mortality increases, and electrical risk, there is no prediction we have. And patients who suffer sudden cardiac death, they might not have EF less than 35, majority of them more than 35%. So we require maybe some other risk predictors for sudden cardiac death in our this population in which we think that we are implanting ICDs. So this is just a current latest discussion on a disruptive innovation. As for introductory sake, I brought it here. Like we should be having resting ECG, some cumulative electrical risk calculation. We should be focusing on some patients with warning symptoms, and we should be understanding the role of non-cardiac conditions, and we should calculate mortality and quality of life benefits, etc. So what is new? MRI compatible pacemakers, leadless pacemakers. So these are the leadless pacemakers. They're implanted right into RV, and we don't have any lead to go on. Subcutaneous ICD, we have, so in this is generator subcutaneously implanted, and these are the leads which are placed outside lateral to sternum. So leadless pacemakers, we have two systems. They are transcatheter, basically we take through catheter. We have Medtronic systems and we have this Inju. This is NanoStim, and both systems provide right ventricular pacing and rate responsiveness. And they are delivered through femoral vein, through a catheter. They differ with respect to size, fixation to myocardium, and the responsiveness. So if we see them, NanoStim length 41, micra 25, so micra is better. Volume 0.8 micra, weight equally both, and this is timed and this is screw-in. Pacing mode, both same because we can't have other than this anything else. Sensor in this is accelerometer, this is temperature, and battery longevity is reasonable in both of them. So it is the NanoStim screw-in helix, and this is nitinol tines which are fixated in tissues, and this is how it looks when we implant it into our patients. So there's an overview of leadless cardiac device concepts. Now there is discussion of that whether we can make complete pacing or maybe complete resynchronization therapy as a leadless. So they are talking of leadless RA, leadless RV, and along with subcutaneous ICD, which will, so the three together will be making a leadless system completely. So we have a single chamber and dual chamber pacemakers with communicating leadless modules, and subcutaneous ICD can provide defibrillation therapy without using a transvenous lead. Then future concepts include adding a leadless pacing component to the SICD capable of providing both brady and cardiac pacing. And leadless cardiac resynchronization therapy concepts include self-contained or externally powered leadless pacers in RA and RV. So that is how it is. Single chamber RV, RV and RA, then RV, RA and subcutaneous. Alone subcutaneous, then it makes it leadless CRT-D, and it makes leadless CRT-P, and it makes leadless epicardial LV pacing. So this is a little futuristic approach, is not in use so often. Now next is remote monitoring. So all these devices, they have a capability of monitoring the patient's rhythm from home. Cost remains obviously issue for all these advances, but we have this. Now next is our wearable cardiac defibrillator. So this is how patient can wear it, this defibrillator. And this is LifeVest model 4000. And a garment elastic belt with connected monitor and defibrillator. Unit visible, two back defibrillation electrodes and ECG recording electrodes mounted on elastic belt, and model worn by a patient. So this is how it detects. It takes time, and see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is arrhythmia is going on, and it is detected, and then it has given a shock. It has delivered a shock. So this is the steps in which it works. Arrhythmia identified. It gives a vibration alarm. Then it gives a siren if arrhythmia continues. Then it gives a loud siren if arrhythmia further continues. Then it gives a bystander warnings, and then gel it's automatically gets released onto the chest of the patient, and there is a shock delivery provided this arrhythmia continues. Otherwise, this device has capability to withhold the shock at any of these phases, provided the arrhythmia gets converted to normal sinus rhythm on its own. So these are the various pictures, like arrhythmia onset and shock is given likewise. So that is how this therapy is quite effective, and almost the failure rate is very, very low. So with time, it gives shock, it detects, it charges, and it shocks. 150 joule delivery as well as ECG recording after shock delivery. And these all things are recorded simultaneously. So what are the guidelines indicate? American Heart Advisory, endorsed by Heart Rhythm Society 2016. So use of variable cardiac defibrillator is reasonable when there is a clear indication for an implanted or permanent device accompanied by a transient contraindication or interruption ICD care such as infection. Then use of WCD is reasonable as a bridge to more definitive therapy such as transplantation. Then it may be reasonable when there is a concern about a heightened risk of sudden cardiac death that may resolve over time or with treatment of LV dysfunction. For example, ischemic heart disease with recent revascularization, newly diagnosed NI cardiomyopathy in patients starting guideline-directed medical therapy, or secondary cardiomyopathy, example take cardia-induced, in which underlying cause is potentially treatable. So such patients can be given variable cardiac defibrillator. It is quite effective and it is quite relevant. It may be appropriate as a bridging therapy in situations with increased risk of death, in which ICD have been shown to reduce sudden cardiac death but not overall survival, such as within 40 days of MI. When patient has to go home, but we are not sure whether patient can get episode and we are not in condition to put ICD. So WCD is an appropriate choice in that time. European Society of Cardiology, what they have to say is that it may be considered for adult patients with poor LV systolic function who are at risk of sudden arrhythmic death for a limited period, but are not candidates for implantable defibrillator. Example, Bristow transplant, Bristow transvenous implant, pericardial cardiomyopathy, acute myocarditis, and arrhythmias in early post-myocardial infarction phase. So here it is clear-cut indication. Now coming to a recent advance, in fact, in pacing, we have a left bundle branch pacing. So left bundle branch pacing, what is this? It has emerged as an alternative method for delivering physiological pacing to achieve electrical synchrony of LV, especially in patients with infranodal AV block and left bundle branch. So all of us, we know that prolonged RV pacing reduces LV function. The proximal left bundle branch run through LV septum and fan out to form a wider target for pacing compared to the his bundle. You know this anatomy. And we all know that RV pacing causes LV mechanical dysynchrony, leading to systolic and diastolic dysfunction, mitral regurgitation, increased LA diameter, and eventually inducing atrial fibrillation, heart failure, and sudden death. So now focus is on putting RV lead into left bundle branch pacing mode. And we have this studies, the Dutch follow pace study. Every 10% increase in RV pacing has an association with 8% risk of heart failure death because of the reduced LV function. And there are algorithms for minimizing ventricular pacing in our contemporary pacemakers, but RVP, right ventricular pacing, has to be there in patients with AV block. So even if we have the various programs to reduce, but if it is mandatory in case of AV block, then if you want or don't want, patient will get RV pacing. And RV pacing is, it causes your mechanical dysynchrony, it leads to various LV dysfunctions. So that is how this left bundle branch pacing has come in. So we are doing it, and I have 2 cases to show you. So case 1 is 70-year male, had syncopal episodes, non-obstructive HCM, EF 50%, LAD was 100%, ISR collateralized, top negative, ECG LVB, and QRS 150. So this is how LVB pacing. So we are seeing that this is your RA lead, this is LVB, this is the pacing lead, which is put in location of left bundle branch, and this is your RV lead, which we will remove later on. So almost same route is done, and we see QRS, it becomes narrow. Same thing in different views. Other case, patient had a recurrent syncope, dilated cardiomyopathy, single vessel disease, EF 35%, moderate MR, LVB, essential hypertension, diabetes, and CKD. So how we go is, first is RV lead we put, then this is the quadripolar catheter we put in place of his bundle. We see his potential to know the location of his and LVB. So this starts as a guideliner for starting our procedure. Then this is the lead. This is lead, which will be bringing this is the sheath, which will be bringing the lead in. So we have put the sheath through RA and into the RV, through tricuspid valve. Then through this sheath, we take the lead and we implant it along left bundle branch. So guidelines, 2018 American Heart Association guidelines, patients with bradycardia and cardiac conduction delay. So it is 2A. It says that in patients with AV block who have an indication for permanent pacing with EF between 36 and 50% and are expected to require ventricular pacing more than 40% of the timings, it is reasonable to choose pacing methods that maintain physiological ventricular activation, example CRT, or his bundle pacing over alone right ventricular pacing. So either we go for both the ventricles synchronous pacing, or we go for his bundle pacing. Then 2B, in whom? In patients with AV block at level of AV node who have an indication for permanent pacing, his bundle pacing may be considered to maintain physiological ventricular activation. So to conclude my talk, we have pacemakers for symptomatic bradycardia. We have CRT for LV dysfunction less than 35%, wide QRS. We have ICD for people who have history of ventricular tachycardia, who are survivors of cardiac arrest. We have for LV dysfunction, we have combo CRT plus ICD for LV dysfunction and QRS. Then we have various ventricular assisted devices, almost total artificial heart we have, and the ventricular assisted devices, the HeartMate 3 and 2, they are but their cost is problem. Then we have the leadless devices, the single chamber, the dual chamber. Single chamber we are putting nowadays, and dual chamber is still not in that much use. And then has the last armamentarium of pacing devices, that is LVB pacing. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much.